This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. We have 6 hours until the clock strikes midnight here in the East. Lawmakers are desperately searching for the metaphorical glass slipper that can keep the federal bureaucracy from turning into a very big, underfunded pumpkin. So far tonight, little talk of last-minute compromise, and almost everyone is proceeding as if the first partial government shutdown in 17 years is virtually inevitable. We have Fox team coverage tonight. James Rosen here in our Washington bureau looks at who will be affected and how. Ed Henry at the White House tells us what the president is and is not doing as the clock ticks down. But we begin with Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel with breaking news from the Pentagon, from the Capitol, I should say. Mike?
Well, Brett, good evening. With time running out, the Senate continues rejecting House-passed government funding bills. Since Senate leaders are not negotiating, House Republicans continue hammering away at Obamacare.
We're going to move here in the next several hours to take the Senate bill, add to it a one-year delay of the individual mandate on the American people, and get rid of the exemption for members of Congress.
The House is going to take a position today reflecting one very fundamental principle that our country stands for: no special treatment for anyone.
Late today, President Obama fired back.
One faction of one party in one House of Congress, in one branch of government, doesn't get to shut down the entire government just to refight the results of an election.
Earlier this afternoon, Senate Democrats stripped a one-year delay of Obamacare and the repeal of the medical device tax by a 54-46 party line vote. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid described this continuing resolution standoff in playground terms.
You know, with a bully, you cannot let them slap you around, because they slap you around. Today they slap you 5 or 6 times. Tomorrow it's 7 or 8 times. We are not going to be bullied.
Democrats want a so-called clean bill that would just fund the government for about a month and a half. New York Senator Chuck Schumer suggested House Speaker John Boehner is listening too much to his Tea Party members.
Speaker Boehner is like the ancient Mayans, making a sacrificial offering to the right-wing gods by refusing to accept a clean CR.
Earlier, Boehner seemed frustrated by the Senate skipping the weekend and waiting until 10 hours from a government shutdown to meet.
It's time for the Senate to listen to the American people, just like the House has listened to the American people, and to pass a one-year delay of Obamacare and a permanent repeal of the medical device tax.
That's what the House passed after midnight Saturday night. So late Sunday, some House Republicans gathered on the Senate steps of the Capitol, drawing this conclusion.
The fact that the senators aren't here and Harry Reid is off somewhere is all the evidence you need to know that they want to shut down the government.
And just moments ago, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas said that he would endorse the House bill that they are considering this evening. He says if the House is successful in passing it, that the Senate should come back and pass this continuing resolution immediately. A bit of a change, because this is not defunding Obamacare, which Cruz had fought for on the floor. Critical vote to watch for this hour. The House needs to pass a rule to move forward with this plan. And there's some concern there may be trouble as members get anxious about a government shutdown, whether they will have the votes to proceed. Brett?
All right, Mike, we'll head back for any breaking news about that rule vote. Mike Emanuel live at the Hill. Mike, thank you. President Obama has positioned himself as a willing peacemaker in the budget standoff. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry tells us tonight it's a lot more complicated than that.
As the clock ticked, President Obama did not have any last-minute meetings with Republican or Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill, though he went forward with a planned sit-down with the Israeli Prime Minister, where he insisted to reporters he's not resigned to a shutdown.
The Senate has passed a bill that keeps the government open, does not have a lot of extraneous issues to it, that allows us then to negotiate a longer-term budget and address a range of other issues.
Just in case, though, the president gathered his cabinet late in the afternoon.
I wish they were spending more time focusing on how to grow jobs in the economy, as opposed to having to spend time figuring out how they manage a government shutdown.
The message pushed throughout the day was the president wants to work with congressional leaders on a broader budget deal outside the threat of a shutdown.
I am not only open to, but eager to have negotiations around a long-term budget that makes sure that we're investing in middle-class families, but the only way to do that is for everybody to sit down in good faith without threatening to harm women and veterans and children with the government shutdown.
Except there was no sit down on the budget today or in recent weeks.
Why don't you at least talk to them, even if they're wrong?
Can I remind you that it was the Speaker of the House in several venues who said at the beginning of this year that he would never negotiate with the President again, that he felt doing so burned him, I suppose.
Bring him over here and force him.
And maybe you didn't catch up to what the President just said, but he said he would be talking to leaders of Congress.
Why is there a meeting today?
Again, I have nothing new to report on the President's schedule.
Republicans continue to charge the President is going slow because the White House wants to pin blame on the GOP.
To me, it looks like the Democrats here in the Senate and the President actually are sort of anxious to have a shutdown.
Spokesman Jay Carney denied that by saying he's not sure who will be helped politically, though he followed other White House aides who have called Republicans terrorists and arsonists.
This is just a blatant extortion.
Now, the president only ratcheted up that rhetoric last hour in the White House briefing room by saying of Republicans, you don't get a ransom just to do your job. That might help him pile on Congress, but it might make it harder to get an actual budget deal. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. It's believed more than 800,000 federal workers will be forced off the job without pay if a funding deal is not reached. Who are they? What stays open in this partial government shutdown? Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has all the fallout.
Zulu and Yankee 11, runway 30.
Air traffic controllers, federal law enforcement officers, the Coast Guard, Customs and Border Patrol, meat inspectors, Postal Service personnel, and lots of other federal workers will stay on the job. But an estimated 800,000 federal employees at national park sites, museums, NASA, and elsewhere will be told to surrender their government-issued smartphones and stay home.
And it can change. In the 1996 shutdown, initially Social Security focused on processing checks and continued to do that, but declared the people that dealt with new applications for benefits to be non-essential. Eventually, after a couple weeks, they started to say, we're going to have a huge backlog, and they actually brought those people back in.
The House and Senate voted to continue paying U.S. troops. At the Department of Veterans Affairs, claims processors will stay on the job, and beneficiaries will receive benefits if the shutdown ends within 3 weeks. But even before then, regional offices handling disability claims will likely cut back on services, and some see the funding stoppage indirectly affecting military operations.
We won't fund the ships, the aircraft, the ground equipment, the sensors, and the ammunition that are always in use in preparing our troops to take the place of those troops who are in combat.
Others see no cause for lasting concern.
There have actually been 17 shutdowns since the late 1970s. The stock market didn't tank in any of those shutdowns. Indeed, in the last big shutdown, 1995 and 96, the stock market actually rose.
But between a 3-year pay freeze, several near shutdowns, and sequestration, which forced some furloughs this summer, Uncle Sam's workforce is feeling battered and weary.
There's sort of a combination of anger and fear of what might come, and I think a certain sort of sense of resignation about here we go again with the same old thing.
As President Obama noted, those on Social Security will continue to receive their checks, and Medicare patients will still be seen by their doctors. But even those assurances, Brett, are predicated on this shutdown not lasting too long.
What about the prospect for these furloughed workers, if we get to that point, getting retroactive pay?
I'm told that in all 17 of the government shutdowns that have occurred since the 70s, that has happened. It should happen this time, too.
We'll see. James, thank you. Well, do you think there should be a government shutdown? Let me know on Twitter. You can follow me at Brett Baer. Up next, what Israel says about Iran's charm offensive. But first, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. Fox 21 in Colorado Springs with accused theater shooter James Holmes back in court. His lawyers are hinting they will not be ready for trial in February. KTTV in Los Angeles with a deadly crash of a twin-engine Cessna into a hangar in Santa Monica. 2 people died in that accident. And this is a live look at our Chicago affiliate, WFLD. The big story there tonight, the crash of 2 commuter trains this morning. Close to 50 people hurt, no fatalities. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. From Special Report, we'll be right back.